I forge thee, my children. In stone find strength, in earth find endurance. Moradin, the Allfather. Legends say that it was Moradin himself that carved the dwarves out of the hardiest stones from the bedrock of the world. With his mighty hammer, he breathed life into them, imbuing them with an indomitable spirit and a profound connection to the land. These earliest years of the dwarves are difficult to pin down and often change depending on which scholar you ask. But the first dwarven clans emerged from their underground cradles. These early dwarves were known as the Firstborn, and they were an industrious people. They carved their homes in the deep places of the world, crafting vast underground cities filled with intricate stonework and precious metals. Their craftsmanship was unmatched, and they have a vast history with tales that can often be heard in many great halls. But today, let's focus on two specific tales that really shaped the fate of the Shield Dwarves. Chapter 1: The Founding of Shanatar, around negative 10,800 DR. Beneath the vast expanses of what would later be known as the Forest of Mir and the sands of Kalimshan, a grand undertaking was set in motion by the Shield Dwarves. Led by the fabled warrior and king Tark Shanat and his kin, the dwarves sought the depths, driven by a vision to create an unparalleled stronghold in the Underdark, an underground realm of endless mystery and formidable danger. Guided by Tark's vision, a procession of shield dwarves, comprised of warriors, artisans, and sages, ventured into the dark. Their journey was perilous, navigating through the cavernous mazes filled with creatures and challenges that tested their resolve and fortitude. Their purpose was to establish a kingdom that was secure from the surface world's conflicts, rooted deep within the world. Upon reaching the caverns that would come to be known as Deep Shanatar, Tark and his followers began the monumental task of constructing what would be the first of the 8 great cities of Shanatar. Utilizing their unmatched skill in stonecraft and engineering, they forged their new homes, bending it seamlessly with the natural caverns. The city was designed not only for defense, but as a bastion of dwarven culture and craftsmanship. In a significant display of unity and foresight, Tark established the Wyrmskull throne, a symbol of authority and a testament to the combined strength of the Shield Dwarves. The throne served as a central point of governance, where leaders from each of the 8 cities would gather to discuss the welfare of the realm. This council ensured that while the city had its autonomy, all would work together for the prosperity and security of Shanatar as a whole. Under Tark's leadership, Shanatar quickly rose to prominence, becoming a center of trade, learning, and military prowess in the Underdark. The forges of Shanatar burned brightly, fueled by the rich veins of ore that were abundant in their territory, and its halls rang with the sounds of hammer and anvil. Chapter 2: The Rise of Delzoun, around at negative 3,900 DR. Driven by a vision of a secure and prosperous homeland in the unclaimed territories to the north, the Shield Dwarves embarked on the establishment of Delzoun. Delzoun's architects and stonemasons employed their unrivaled craftsmanship to the new strongholds from the living rock of the Silver Marches. This network of fortresses and settlements was strategically placed, both to extract rich mineral wealth from the region and to establish a line of defense against any who would dare challenge the dwarven claim to these lands. Some of these sites would include the likes of Galtagrim, negative 335, a city known for its unparalleled forges, and it was nestled deep within the rugged wilderness of the north of Faerun. It was said that the city's heart was fueled by an internal flame, harnessed to power the mighty forges unmatched across the land. Citadel Adbar, negative 272 DR, a self-sufficient bastion with its own farms, water sources, and forges, renowned for its martial culture and warriors. Citadel Felbar, negative 1900 DR, a city famed for its deep mines, skilled smiths, and strong ale, a critical ally to the surrounding human settlements. Citadel Sunbar, -500 DR. A hub of trade and military prowess, it attracted merchants, warriors, and artisans alike to its formidable stony walls. Mithril Hall, sometime before 0 DR, nestled in the spine of the world, a testament to the wealth and craftsmanship of its builders. The hall was a jewel of dwarven architecture and engineering. For centuries, Delzoun prospered. Its influence extended across the north. The kingdom became a center for trade, drawing merchants from as far as Waterdeep and Baldur's Gate. The dwarves of Delzoun, staunch and resilient, became known for their diplomatic acumen as well as their martial prowess, forging alliances that would ensure peace and mutual prosperity. The dwarves of Delzoun were custodians of ancient knowledge, preserving the lore of stone and steel passed down through generations. Their libraries were as deep and wide as their minds, filled with scrolls and tomes that chronicled everything from the lineage of kings to the subtleties of metallurgy. This commitment to knowledge and tradition helped to cement Delzoun's reputation as a beacon of dwarven culture. Chapter 3: The Golden Ages. During the time that followed their respective foundations, both Shanatar and Delzoun experienced periods of remarkable prosperity and cultural richness, often referred to as their Golden Ages. These eras were categorized by significant advancements in art, technology, and governance, as well as by an expansion of their economic and political influence. Shanatar, thriving in the subterranean domain, became known for its unparalleled smithing and craftsmanship. The great forges of the Underdark, powered by volcanic heat, produced works that were coveted across the realms. Magical artifacts, masterfully crafted armor, and weapons imbued with arcane powers were among the exports that brought wealth and prestige to Shanatar. The city's architecture, carved from the very stone of the Underdark, was both majestic and functional, designed to harness and reflect the innate beauty of their dark, stony world. Shanatar's halls were lined with luminescent materials, casting an otherworldly glow, illuminating intricate carvings depicting the histories and myth of the dwarven people. Delzoun enjoyed a golden era of its own. The kingdom's strongholds, connected by roads and protected by formidable fortresses, created a network of security and prosperity. Sunbar was a hub of activity and innovation. Here, the mingling of dwarven sturdiness with the ideas of other cultures fostered a renaissance of sorts, giving rise to advancements in engineering and magical arts. Delzoun's strategic position in the north allowed it to control several key trade routes. The wealth generated from these routes enabled the kingdom to sponsor expeditions to distant lands and to invest in large-scale engineering projects that further strengthened its cities and infrastructure. In both kingdoms, the arts flourished. Music and stone carving were not merely hobbies, but were seen as essential aspects of dwarven heritage. Festivals celebrating these arts drew visitors from far and wide, helping to dispel the myth of dwarves as mere miners and warriors, and showcasing their depth of spirit and intellect. Diplomatically, both Shanatar and Delzoun extended their reach and influence. Shanatar, through its underground networks, establishing pacts with other denizens of the Underdark, ensuring peace and mutual prosperity. Delzoun, meanwhile, forged alliances with emerging human kingdoms and other dwarven clans, securing its borders and expanding its trade relationships. Chapter 4: Struggles within the Kingdom. As Shanatar and Delzoun reached the peaks of their respective golden ages, the seeds of internal struggle and external pressures began to sprout, challenging the stability and unity that had bolstered their civilizations for centuries. In Shanatar, the wealth accumulated through trade and craftsmanship began to create rifts among the ruling houses. The intense competition for resources and political influence led to secretive dealings and power struggles within the great houses. These internal conflicts were exacerbated by the inherent dangers of the Underdark, where alliances with other subterranean creatures and factions were always tenuous, and fraught with potential betrayal. Delzoun faced a different set of challenges, primarily external threats. The burgeoning power and prosperity of the kingdom drew the envy and greed of the neighboring realms and races. Orcs and goblins, pushed by their growing populations and dwindling resources, began to raid Delzoun's outlying settlements. These constant skirmishes strained the kingdom's resources and tested the strength of its military. Both kingdoms also struggled with the burden of their legacies. Descendants of the founders were expected to uphold the traditions and visions of their forebears, but not all were fit for or interested in these roles. This often led to leadership that was either too slow to adapt to changing times or too reckless in its pursuits of glory and power, further destabilizing the realms. Shanatar's intricate network of alliances within the Underdark began to unravel as the kingdom's internal strife leaked out into its diplomatic relations. Accusations of espionage and sabotage from within made other races wary of their dealings with the dwarves, leading to isolation and the gradual decline in trade and political influence. In Delzoun, the continuous external threats eventually led to the fracturing of unity amongst the clans. Some advocated for aggressive expansion and fortification, while others pushed for diplomacy and trade to alleviate the pressures. This division weakened their common front, making it harder to respond effectively to external threats and internal dissent. Chapter 5: The Fall of Shanatar. As the internal strife within Shanatar worsened, the great kingdom of the Underdark began its slow descent into chaos and eventual collapse. The once unified houses turned against each other, fueled by greed and the lust of power, undermining the stability that had sustained Shanatar for centuries. Trust among the great houses eroded as accusations of treachery and betrayal became rampant. These divisions were not just political, but also deeply personal, tearing apart families and long-standing alliances. As unity crumbled, the kingdom's ability to manage its resources and defend against external threats diminished significantly. Simultaneously, the kingdom faced increasing pressure from the other denizens of the Underdark. Drow, Dwegar, and other creatures saw the weakening of Shanatar as an opportunity to expand their own territories. These races launched raids and incursions that further destabilized the region, seizing territories and valuable resources once held by the dwarves. The tipping point came with the cataclysmic battle that is said to have occurred deep within the most sacred halls of Shanatar. The details are murky, lost to history, but it was a conflict so devastating that it not only led to a significant loss of life, but also the physical collapse of key structures within the kingdom, sealing its fate. Following this disaster, Shanatar fragmented into isolated enclaves. Some of these remnants continued to hold onto their heritage and territories, but without the unity and strength of the kingdom, they were shadows of their former selves. Over time, many of these enclaves either fell to external enemies or were abandoned as their populations fled to safer regions or to the surface. Chapter 6: The Decline of Delzoun. The Year of Terrible Anger, -111 BR. This conflict would prove to be a critical blow to the stability and strength of the Northern Kingdom, leading to its eventual downfall. In the years leading up to -111 DR, tensions had been mounting between the dwarves of Delzoun and the various threats from the Underdark and the surface. United under powerful warlords, the orc forces and other monstrous races became an increasingly formidable threat. Their relentless expansion and aggression set the stage for a massive conflict with the dwarves of Delzoun. In the Year of Terrible Anger, the orc forces and their leaders launched a series of coordinated attacks on the strongholds of Delzoun, The siege of Galtagrim was fierce and brutal, as the attackers sought to claim the ancient city and its powerful forges for themselves. Despite the dwarves' formidable defense and valiant efforts, the sheer number and ferocity of the invading horde overwhelmed them. The fall of Galtagrim marked a significant point in the history of Delzoun. The city's formidable defenses and its strategic importance as a center of trade industry and magical forging made its loss a crippling blow to the kingdom's ability to sustain the war effort. The defeat demoralized the dwarves and disrupted their lines of communication and supply. With Galtagrim fallen, the unity and morale of Delzoun's forces began to fracture. The constant pressure from the orc armies, combined with the logistical nightmare of maintaining supply lines and communications, led to the increasing disarray within the ranks of the dwarves. The loss of such a vital stronghold signaled the beginning of the end for Delzoun as a unified kingdom. The once mighty kingdom, known for its strength and resilience, was reduced to scattered strongholds and enclaves. The orcs and their allies, now dominant in the region, seized control of Galtagrim's forges and resources, marking a significant shift in the power dynamics of the north. Most of Delzoun's strongholds would fall later on with this weakening of the kingdom. Citadel Felbar. This stronghold fell to the orcs in 1104 DR, long after the initial decline of Delzoun, but it remained under orc control for over 250 years. Mithril Hall. This hall was lost around 1100 DR to a shadow dragon in the Dwegar. Sundabar. It barely survived, and the surface part of the city would be raided for many years. Humans would later settle there on the surface and become the majority population. The city's culture shifted as a result. Through all the turmoil, only Citadel Adbar remained a true dwarven stronghold, the last shard of a once mighty kingdom. Its defenses held firm against all external threats, and its people continued to uphold the traditions and strength of their ancestors. The Year of Terrible Anger and the fall of Galtagrim were catalysts for the downfall of Delzoun. The subsequent Battle of Many Arrows further weakened and fragmented the remnants of the kingdom. These devastating events not only shattered the kingdom's defenses, but also destroyed the dominance of dwarven power in the region. The memory of Delzoun would endure through the ages. The dwarves would never forget their lands that were lost, their homes that were destroyed, and they would never forget who it was that caused it. Chapter 7. Dwarves in Exile. Following the collapse of Shanatar and the fragmentation of Delzoun, the once mighty dwarven kingdoms were left in ruins, and their peoples scattered. This chapter in the dwarven history marks a period of exile and survival amongst the remnants of these great civilizations struggled to find their place in the world where ancestral homes were no longer safe havens. The survivors of Shanatar, now refugees in the twisting labyrinths of the Underdark, faced a harsh reality. With their cities overrun by enemies or lay waste by civil war, these dwarves were forced into a nomadic lifestyle or sought refuge in less hostile regions of the Underdark. Some even braved the surface world, integrating with the surface communities or establishing small, secretive enclaves. Similarly, the dwarves of Delzoun, driven from their ancestral strongholds, found themselves dispersed across the north. The loss of critical fortresses and the breakdown of the kingdom's infrastructure forced many into a nomadic existence. Others sought refuge in allied territories or the remaining strongholds that withstood the onslaught, such as Citadel Adbar. In exile, the challenge for these dwarves was not only physical survival, but also the preservation of their cultural identity. Stripped of the markers of their civilization, their forges, halls, and libraries, dwarves from both kingdoms clung to their traditions, crafts, and lore as lifelines of their past. Storytelling, particularly the recounting of their histories and the valor of their ancestors, became a vital part of their community life, serving as both education for the young and solace for the old. As the years turned into decades, the dwarves began to adapt to their new circumstances. Those from Shanatar who remained in the Underdark developed more sophisticated means of camouflage and stealth, becoming apt at avoiding the dangers that roamed in the dark. Meanwhile, those who went to the surface integrated their architectural and crafting skills into the communities that welcomed them, often leading to a renaissance of dwarven craftsmanship in human and elven territories. The dwarves of Delzoun, scattered across the north, became renowned as master builders and miners, often hired to fortify or excavate new settlements. Their skills, particularly in stonework and metallurgy, were in high demand, and they played critical roles in the growth of emerging human cities and fortresses. Despite the dispersion, the bonds of kinship and clan remained strong amongst the dwarves. Regular gatherings and festivals were organized, where dwarves from different regions would come together to exchange news, trade goods, and strengthen their communal ties. These events were vital for maintaining the dwarven spirit and ensuring that their heritage remained alive. Chapter 8: Reclaiming the Past. As the years of exile stretched into decades, a burgeoning sentiment began to take root amongst the scattered communities of the dwarves, a desire to reclaim their lost heritage. The initial steps towards reclaiming their past involved perilous expeditions into the ruins of their ancient kingdoms. Teams of daring dwarves composed of warriors, historians, and craftsmen ventured into the dangerous territories of the Underdark and the monster-infested wilderness of the north. These expeditions aimed to assess the viability of restoration and to salvage ancient artifacts and tomes that held the accumulated knowledge of their forebears. One of the most significant events in this period was the campaign to reclaim Mithril Hall. In 1356 DR, a legendary figure amongst the dwarves, King Brunor Battlehammer, led a determined force to retake the hall that had fallen to orcs and shadowy figures decades earlier. The battle for Mithril Hall was fierce and costly, but ultimately successful, serving as a beacon of hope and a symbol of the dwarves' resilience and capability to reclaim their history. Similarly, Citadel Adbar, which had withstood the onslaught that brought down much of Delzoun, became a center for the dwarven renaissance in the north. Under the leadership of wise and steadfast rulers, the citadel not only fortified its defenses, but also expanded its forges and libraries, inviting dwarven scholars and artisans from across the region to contribute to a cultural and economic revival. In the case of the remnants of Shanatar, the approach was different, but no less daring. Recognizing the impossibility of solitary survival in the difficult environments of the Underdark, the dwarves sought alliances with other races and factions within the depths. These alliances, often brokered with difficulty and maintained through complex diplomacy, allowed the dwarves to establish secure enclaves and began the slow process of rebuilding their presence in the Underdark. As the dwarves reclaimed their ancestral homes, they also rediscovered and revitalized many of the ancient crafts and practices that had been lost during the years of exile. The forges of both Mithril Hall and Citadel Adbar rang with the sounds of hammers on anvils as master smiths passed down ancient techniques and secrets to new generations of dwarven craftsmen. Chapter 9: The Shield Dwarves Today. In the present day, the Shield Dwarves have not only recovered much of what was lost, but have also adapted to the changing dynamics of a world that continues to evolve. The most significant event in recent history for the Dwarven people was the Thunder Blessing of 1306 DR. After centuries of demographic decline, this miraculous event brought a sudden boom in fertility, resulting in the births of many twins amongst the dwarves. Widely believed to be the work of Moradin, the Thunder Blessing is thought to have been a reward for a quest by a dwarven hero or a part of a greater plan by the Allfather. The Thunder Blessing led to a demographic resurgence that revitalized the dwarven populations. The so-called Thunder Children were more radical in comparison with their parents, and during their lifetimes, the dwarves took a more active role in the world. This era, known as the Era of Upheaval, saw dwarves abandoning some of their oldest traditions, such as the fear of magic and the arcane. This cultural shift allowed the dwarves to embrace new technologies and arcane practices, integrating them with their traditional crafts. As far as some of those earlier settlements, Cultigrim was reclaimed in 1451 DR by a coalition led by Brunor Battlehammer. Cultigrim has become a beacon of dwarven ingenuity and strength. The reclamation of Cultigrim has also renewed interest into ancient dwarven lore and techniques that were thought lost to time. Citadel Felbar was reclaimed in 1367 DR from Orc occupation, and it's been restored to its former glory. Its defenses have been strengthened, and its mines and forges are more active than ever. The Citadel stands as a symbol of dwarven tenacity, having withstood multiple sieges and invasions throughout its history. Diplomatically, the dwarves have expanded their horizons. They have strengthened old alliances and forged new ones, recognizing the importance of collaboration in a world where threats can arise from any corner. A significant part of this diplomatic effort is their involvement in the League of Silver Marches. This alliance, comprising of dwarves, humans, and elves, was established to promote peace, mutual defense, and prosperity across the north. The League has become a vital platform for addressing regional threats and fostering cooperation amongst the various races. Culturally, the dwarves have experienced a renaissance. Festivals celebrating the old traditions and new achievements are common, drawing visitors from far and wide. Dwarven alehouses and halls are renowned for their hospitality, and the tales told by bards that echo the heroic deeds of ancient kings and the promising endeavors of the current generations. Today, the Shield Dwarves stand as a testament to the enduring spirit of a people who, faced with the annihilation of their way of life, fought not only to reclaim their past, but to build a future that honors their history. Their reclaimed settlements, thriving trade, and strategic alliances have set the foundation for a prosperous future. As the Shield Dwarves look to the horizon, they are guided by the wisdom of their ancestors and the innovative spirit that has always been at the heart of their civilization. Their involvement in the League of Marches exemplifies their commitment to peace, ensuring that the legacy of the Shield Dwarves will continue to shine brightly across Faerun. Through their resilience and ingenuity, they honor the past, navigate the present, and forge a path toward a future where the strength and culture of the dwarves will endure for generations to come.